Take a breath with me. In and out. Now listen. Do you hear it? The silence of a night that is not natural, not peaceful, but heavy, thick like smoke before fire. A silence that hides footsteps, weapons, intentions. A silence so deep it presses on the chest, as though the earth itself knows what is about to happen. History has buried this night. The reports were erased, the names of the dead never recorded. But memory is stubborn, and tonight, we uncover what was meant to rot in silence. This is not just another forgotten page. It is a massacre hidden from the books. Soldiers stormed the slave quarters, leaving behind only blood, smoke, and silence. Imagine a plantation on the edge of empire. The year is the late 18th century. The colony, lush and cruel, stands as a jewel for European merchants. Sugarcane stretches endlessly, swaying like an ocean of green blades. By day, the fields glitter under the sun. By night, they become shadows too dense to cross without fear. To the masters, this land is wealth incarnate. To the enslaved, it is a prison without walls. 500,000 men, women, and children lived under these chains. They worked from dawn until their hands bled raw, their backs scarred by whips, their bodies bent under a system that measured humanity only in profit. The plantation houses glowed with candlelight, their windows spilling music and laughter. But only a few hundred feet away, in dark wooden barracks, the enslaved collapsed onto dirt floors, their dreams interrupted by rats, insects, hunger, and grief. The fear of revolt haunted every master's mind. They heard whispers of Haiti, where enslaved people rose in fire and blade, shattering the illusion of European supremacy. They feared poison in their cups, flames in their cane fields, blades hidden in the hands of those they called property. So they armed themselves. They built militias. They cultivated terror. And when suspicion rose, when rumors spread the revolt was being planned, they struck first. That is where our story begins. Picture it. The quarters are quiet. Families huddle close. Bodies pressed together against the damp chill of night. A mother hums a lullaby to soothe her child, though her voice trembles under exhaustion. A young man sharpens a tool quietly in the dark, not knowing if tomorrow will cut cane or cut chains. An elder whispers prayers to ancestors, eyes closed, lips moving silently. The smell of smoke lingers from the hearth fires that barely keep the cold away. Then, faint, almost imperceptible, comes another sound. The crunch of boots on soil. The rattle of metal against metal. Soldiers. Their torches are not yet lit. Their voices hushed, but their intent is loud as thunder. They march with orders not of arrest, but of annihilation. Pause here with me. I want you to imagine what it feels like to be inside that wooden barrack, unaware of what is approaching. Your body aches. Your breath is shallow, but for a moment you allow yourself to hope for rest. Maybe tomorrow will be just another day of survival. And then the door shudders. Shadows stretch across the floor. The silence, the heavy silence, snaps. The massacre is about to begin. But before the blood, we must understand the soil it was spilled on. This colony, like so many in the Caribbean and Brazil, was built on two faces. Above ground, the manicured gardens, the whitewashed mansions, the polished silver. Below ground, the dungeons, the chains, the unmarked graves. The contrast was deliberate. Civilization displayed above, barbarity buried below. European visitors wrote letters marveling at the wealth. The sugar of this colony sweetens the tables of Paris and London, but they rarely roll the bodies that cut the cane, of the bones buried under fields, of the screams muffled by stone walls. To acknowledge that truth was to admit the entire empire was built on blood. And so, when a massacre occurred, when soldiers tore through slave quarters leaving only silence, the record books turned their pages blank. To the masters, history was not about truth. It was about control. Tonight, we return to that blank page. We fill it with voices that were silenced. The soldiers advance. Their muskets glint faintly under the moon. Some carry torches unlit, waiting for the order to ignite. Their faces are hard, some pale with fear, others twisted with cruelty. They tell themselves this is necessary, that they are protecting order, protecting civilization, that these people in wooden huts are not families, but threats. They clutch their weapons tighter. Inside, the enslaved still breathe unaware. A child shifts in her sleep. A man rolls over, groaning softly. The elder finishes his whispered prayer, asking the ancestors for one more day. And in that cruel twist of fate, the ancestors hear, but the soldiers are faster. This is the silence before the storm. And storms, when they break, do not ask permission. The silence breaks with splintering. The first door crashes inward, shards scattering across the dirt floor. A torch flares to life, its sudden light blinding, cruel, unnatural in the sleeping quarters. For one breath, confusion reigns. A child blinks awake, her eyes wide, not yet understanding. A man rises, hands raised in instinct, his body unarmed, his voice asking only one word: why? The answer is fire, a torch hurled into straw mats. Flames leap instantly, orange devouring darkness, sparks clinging to skin, hair, clothing. The soldiers pour inside like shadows with teeth. Muskets roar in enclosed space, the thunder deafening, smoke choking lungs. The air fills not with words, but with screams, high, ragged, cut short by steel. Outside, more soldiers move methodically from hut to hut. Their boots slam into wooden doors. Their blades catch moonlight before catching flesh. Muskets flash again and again, the smell of gunpowder mixing with sweat and blood. Torches light huts one by one, turning the slave quarters into an inferno. Pause here. Imagine standing in that chaos. You wake to smoke burning your throat, to heat singeing your skin, to the sound of soldiers shouting orders in a language meant to command not just men, but terror itself. You see neighbors you work beside, people you prayed beside, cut down before they can even stand. The quarters that once offered frail shelter now collapse in fire and ash. A woman clutches her child to her chest, stumbling through smoke. She coughs, eyes streaming, but she runs toward the doorway. For a moment, she believes she might escape. A shadow blocks her path. The gleam of steel descends. The scream cuts into the night, then cuts off. The child falls silent. The soldiers were not fighting a battle. They were performing a purge. Their orders were clear: leave no seed of revolt alive. The massacre was preemptive, calculated, designed not just to kill, but to erase. Some enslaved fight back. A young man grabs a wooden pestle used for pounding grain and swings it with all his strength. The blow lands, cracking bone, and for one breath there is hope. But muskets fire again, and his body falls beside the soldier he struck. Another man raises a machete, the same tool he used in fields, now a weapon of desperation. His cry is fierce, his strike true, but bayonets pierce his chest before his blade can fall a second time. Blood spreads across dirt floors, soaking into earth that has already drunk too much. Flames roar louder, devouring wooden beams, collapsing roofs. The crackle of fire drowns all but the most desperate screams. Some run, into fields, into forests, into night. Shadows scatter like startled birds, vanishing and decaying taller than men. Soldiers pursue, muskets firing blindly into stalks. Dogs unleash to hunt. The cries of the hunted echo, ragged, terrified, abruptly cut short. Others hide. Beneath straw, beneath collapsed timbers, press into shadows. They hold their breath, cover children's mouths, whisper prayers into the dirt. Some survive the first sweep, waiting, trembling. But the soldiers are thorough. Torches are thrust into every corner, blades into every hiding place. Fire finds those the soldiers miss. In one hut, an elder refuses to flee. His body too frail, his spirit too stubborn. He sits cross-legged as flames consume the walls around him, his lips moving in prayer, eyes reflecting fire. Soldiers pause for a moment, unnerved by his calm. Then a musket cracks, and silence falls again. The massacre is relentless, but not mindless. Soldiers spare no thought for mercy, yet every act is deliberate. They drag bodies into courtyards, piling them like refuse. They cut throats of the wounded to ensure no breath survives. They smash pots, scatter food, destroy what little the enslaved owned. It is not enough to kill. They must erase. By midnight, The slave quarters are no longer quarters. They are ruins. Smoldering beams collapse into ash. Smoke rises in thick columns, drifting across fields, blotting out stars. The air stinks of iron and salt, blood and fire. The plantation, once alive with labor, is silent but for the crackle of flames and the groans of the dying. Pause here with me again. Picture the horizon glowing faint red, not with sunrise, but with fire. Picture the silence after screams, a silence heavy, suffocating, more final than death. Imagine the earth beneath your feet, warm not from the sun, but from blood spilled in rivers. This is not chaos. This is policy. Colonial rule was not afraid of brutality. It relied on it. Every massacre was a message, a performance meant to terrify survivors into obedience. Soldiers did not storm quarters because they lost control. They stormed because they wanted control to last forever. The blood was meant not only for those who died, but for those who lived to remember. And remember they did. A woman crawls in the ruins, her hands burned raw, her face streaked with soot and tears. Behind her, the corpse of her husband lies half buried in ash. In her arms, she carries a child barely breathing. She staggers into the cane fields, vanishes into night. Her survival is not triumph. It is witness. She will carry the memory, whisper to others, keep alive what the masters tried to erase. That is how massacres fail, not because blood is spared, but because memory survives. The soldiers march back to the great house. Their torches now lit, their laughter low, uneasy, cruel. They report to their superiors. The threat is gone, the revolt prevented, order restored. The masters nod, satisfied. Wine glasses are raised, sugar is tasted, prophets discussed. And outside their windows, smoke rises, carry with it the truth they will never write down. The massacre is done, but dawn arrives, but it does not feel like dawn. The sun climbs slow, pale, hidden behind columns of smoke that still rise from the ruins. The plantation is quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that comes not from peace but from absence. The quarters are gone, the fields are empty, and scattered across the earth, the bodies of the enslaved remain unburied, burned, broken. The survivors are few. Those who fled into forests now crouch in shadows, holding their breath at every snap of twig. Some carry wounds that bleed unchecked. Others carry children too small to understand, their cries muffled against trembling shoulders. Hunger gnaws at them before the day even begins. Thirst burns their throats. But greater than hunger or thirst is fear. Fear that soldiers will return, that the hunt is not yet done. In nearby towns, bells toll. Officials gather in chambers thick with smoke and arrogance. Reports arrive. The threat has been crushed. The quarters destroyed. Rebels executed. Words written in neat script, devoid of the screams they cover. To the colonial rulers, this is success, proof that order has been preserved. To them, the massacre is not atrocity, but necessity. But fear spreads, even among masters, because violence is a tool that cuts both ways. News of the blood travels fast, not only to soldiers and officials, but to plantations miles away. Whispers cross Cane Field like wind. They killed them all. The quarters burned. No one was spared. The enslaved listen, and though their hearts tremble, something else grows beside fear. Fury. The rulers know this. They know memory can be more dangerous than machetes. So they act quickly, not just with weapons, but with words. They forbid discussion of the massacre. They ban gatherings after dark. Punish those who whisper. Priests step into pulpits and preach sermons of obedience, twisting scripture into shackles. Officials issue proclamations, calling the massacre a regrettable necessity to preserve peace. Their goal is clear: bury the truth before it grows roots. But the truth resists burial. In the quarters that remain on other plantations, women sing lullabies at night. The words are soft, but inside them lies memory. They sing of fire in the fields, of blood on the earth, of a woman who tried to run and was cut down but did not bow her head. Children listen wide-eyed, their small hearts learning that silence does not erase. In the forest, fugitives huddle. They whisper names of the dead, vowing never to forget. Some scratch marks into tree bark, symbols, codes, memories etched in wood, so that even if they are hunted, the trees will remember. For them, survival is more than breath. It is witness. The colonial rulers send soldiers into villages, demanding silence. Those who dare to speak of the massacre are flogged, imprisoned, sometimes killed. A man caught telling others what he saw is tied to a post in the town square. His back is flayed open while the crowd is forced to watch. Officials declare, this is what happens when lies spread. But everyone watching knows the truth. He carried was not a lie. His silence, forced by pain, only makes the memory louder. Pause here. Imagine being a child in that square, watching the lash fall, seeing blood run down the man's spine, hearing him groan but never retract his words. Imagine how that burns itself into your memory. Imagine how that grows into rage. The rulers believe terror will erase defiance, but terror plants seeds too. Seeds that grow in hidden soil, watered by grief, fed by memory. Meanwhile, in Europe, the massacre is never spoken of. Ships carry sugar, coffee, cotton, products of blood, but not stories of the blood itself. Wealth arrives polished, wiped clean, stripped of the screams that created it. Officials write letters across the ocean, carefully omitting details. They call it disturbance, discipline, necessary correction, never massacre, never atrocity. But silence does not last forever. Travelers write in secret journals, describing the smoke still rising, the smell of burning flesh, the sound of gunfire echoing into forests. A priest, shaken by what he saw, scribbles words he dares not speak aloud. I watched men of God walk past corpses without blessing, without prayer. I wondered if heaven closed its eyes that night. His notes, hidden in dusty archives, will one day be found. For now, though, the silence spreads like a second massacre, not of bodies, but of memory. The enslaved know they cannot speak openly, so they code memory into rhythm. Drums beat in patterns that sound like music, but carry messages. Remember, songs carry phrases in African tongues that overseers do not understand, phrases that preserve the night of fire. Women weave braids and patterns that map escape routes, but also encode remembrance, a living archive on their heads. And still, soldiers patrol. Still, officials insist. Still, masters believe the massacre will fade. But survivors carry something more powerful than fear. They carry the knowledge that revolt, even imagined, even whispered, terrifies the rulers so deeply they will kill to prevent it. And in that knowledge lies a dangerous truth. The masters are afraid. Afraid enough to massacre, afraid enough to silence, afraid enough to betray their own fear in every act of cruelty. The survivors whisper among themselves, if they fear us as much, then we are not powerless. Pause with me here. Take a breath. In, out. Can you feel it? The shift from despair to defiance? The knowledge that memory itself is resistance? The massacre tried to kill not only bodies but the possibility of hope. Yet hope clings stubbornly, like smoke that lingers long after the fire is gone. The officials may cover it up. The priests may sanctify silence. The masters may toast their prophets in mansions untouched by flame. But in the fields, in the forests, in the songs at night, the truth lives. And truth, once whispered, never fully dies. This is the aftermath of the massacre. Not just blood on the earth, but memory in the air. Not just silence enforced, but silence defied. The rulers think they have restored order. What they have done is plant the future. Night falls again on the land where blood was spilled. The smoke has thinned, but the ground still remembers. Ash mixes with soil, and every gust of wind carries whispers the soldiers cannot hear. The massacre, though covered in silence, begins its second life, not as event, but as story. Stories are harder to kill than people. In the quarters that remain, women begin to weave memory into lullabies. A mother rocks her child and hums. Not a song from the church, not a hymn taught by priests, but a melody carried from Africa. She changes the words, hiding them under layers of rhythm. To the overseer passing by, it is only song. To the child, it is history. The song tells of a night when the fields burned, when chains were broken, when people fought until the sky itself turned red. It tells of courage. It tells of defiance. Children fall asleep not with comfort, but with fire glowing in their dreams. In the forest, fugitives tell their own version. Around small fires, they whisper the woman who defied soldiers, of the elder who stood unbowed, of children who vanish into smoke, but whose spirits still walk the earth. Some say they have seen her, eyes glowing faintly among the trees, blade in hand, leading those who dare to flee. She becomes more than memory. She becomes guardian, spirit, warrior reborn. Legends grow because people need them to. When the present is unbearable, legend offers weapon and shield. And so the massacre, meant to erase hope, begins to feed it. Pause here. Close your eyes. Imagine sitting in darkness, the forest alive with insects and the crackle of fire. A man leans close, his voice low. They thought they killed us all, but she still walks. When you hear rustling the cane, when you feel wind where no wind blows, that is her, reminding us, rise. The hairs on your arms stand. You believe, and belief itself becomes survival. The colonists do not realize it, but their silent strategy has failed. By forbidding speech, they force memory underground, where it becomes stronger. By denying public mourning, they create secret rituals. Women bury scraps of cloth from the dead, placing stones as markers no overseer can interpret. Men carve small symbols into tools, triangles, circles, lines that look like scratches but mean, we remember. Even religion becomes battlefield. Priests preach obedience in chapels, but outside, enslaved men and women gather under moonlight to dance, to drum, to call spirits of ancestors. These ceremonies, half hidden, half feared by overseers, transform memory into ritual. A massacre becomes sacrifice. The dead are not forgotten. They are honored. Their blood becomes covenant. Never bow, never break, never forget. And slowly, whispers travel beyond. Sailors hear rumors in taverns, stories of the night of fire, of soldiers who killed entire quarters. They carry them across seas, to Havana, to Salvador, to Kingston. In each new place, the story shifts, bends, grows. In one telling, the rebels fought until dawn and vanished like smoke, never captured. In another, a woman's spirit led them into the ocean, where waves swallowed them whole, promising return. Each version keeps the core alive. Resistance is possible, memory survives. The officials call these tales dangerous lies. They hang men accused of spreading them. They flog women for singing too loudly. But the very need for such punishments proves failure. For if silence had succeeded, there would be nothing left to punish. Pause again. Ask yourself, what is stronger, the blade of a soldier or the whisper of a song sung for generations? The massacre, meant to prove domination, proves instead vulnerability. Every colony learns. The rulers fear memory. The enslaved learn memory is weapon. And so memory becomes rebellion. On other plantations, slaves begin to mimic the story. When cane fields mysteriously catch fire, whispers blame her spirit. When overseers found poison, people murmur. The massacre speaks again. The rulers grow paranoid. They send spies into quarters. But spies cannot hear songs' hidden meanings. They ban drums, but rebels turn rhythms into hand claps, into feet stomping, into coded humming. Nothing stops the pulse. The massacre becomes myth, and myth becomes prophecy. Some believe the dead will return one night, leading armies of ancestors to tear down empire. Others believe each rebellion is their resurrection. Either way, the massacre does not stay buried. It breathes. And with each retelling, the faceless gain faces, the nameless gain names. Even if invented, names matter. A woman becomes Maria the Flame. A child becomes Joao the Chains. A man becomes the last singer. Whether real or imagined, they fill silence with presence. Centuries later, archaeologists will uncover chains fused to stone, bones beneath collapsed walls. Historians will find faint records, soldiers' notes, priests' confessions. But long before that, the enslaved themselves already preserved the truth, not in archives, but in breath. Pause one last time. Picture a grandmother in the late 19th century, free but poor, sitting on a porch. Children gather around her. She tells them, I saw fire once when I was small. They say it was forbidden to speak, but I tell you now, do not forget, for silence is what they wanted, and silence is what we cannot give. This is the power of memory. The massacre tried to bury voices. Instead, it multiplied them. History moves like water. You can try to dam it, to bury it, to silence it, but it finds cracks. It leaks, it seeps, it flows. And so it was with the massacre. Officials thought they had sealed it away. No records in the ledgers. No plaques, no sermons, no trials that might leave traces. But memory is a current stronger than ink. From the Caribbean to Brazil, from Cuba to the American South, whispers of the slaughter became sparks. And sparks, when carried by breath, when fueled by rage, ignite. In Bahia, decades later, when the Mayo Revolt of 1835 erupted, led by African Muslim slaves who plotted under the cover of night, some rebels invoked the memory of the Night of Fire. They spoke of ancestors who had died in silence, but left behind a promise. We rise, they whispered, because they could not. For them, the massacre was not tragedy. It was unfinished business. In Jamaica, maroon communities hidden in the Blue Mountains told stories of spirits who had once fought in other lands, slaughtered but not erased. They believed these spirits traveled across oceans to guide them in ambushes, to guard them in forests. To the colonial governors, maroons were bandits. To themselves, they were heirs of massacres, carrying vengeance across generations. In Cuba, during Conspiracy Elias Galera in 1844, when hundreds of enslaved men and women were accused, tortured, and executed for plotting rebellion, prisoners whispered of her, a nameless woman who led a massacre in another colony, who returned in dreams to tell them not to confess, not to break, not to beg. Her story, carried like smoke from island to island, gave strength even under torture. And in the American South, though details blur with distance, the idea alone remained. Somewhere enslaved people had risen, soldiers had slaughtered them, and yet their voices still lived. Enslaved preachers hinted at it in sermons, blending biblical prophecy with coded references. They spoke of Egypt, of Pharaoh's army drowned, but their listeners knew. Pharaoh wore a different face here, and the drowned army was not the past but the hope of tomorrow. Pause here. Imagine hearing this as a slave in Virginia, 1820s. You been in cotton fields all day, whipped for falling behind. At night, in a cabin, a fellow slave leans close, whispering. They try to erase a massacre far away, but it was not erased. It lives in us. It means the masters can bleed. For a moment, your exhaustion lifts. For a moment, you feel less alone. This is how silence failed. Officials thought that hiding the massacre would erase it. Instead, they gave it power. In absence of records, imagination filled the gaps. And imagination, fused with anger, is more dangerous than any archive. The massacre's echo also shaped culture in quieter ways. In Brazil, women sang work songs that shifted tones when overseers turned their backs. In one verse, they hummed of fire, of fields burning. In another, of blood washing the earth clean. Overseers thought it nonsense. The enslaved knew otherwise. In the Caribbean, drumming ceremonies carried coded rhythms set to honor the dead of that night. A certain beat, struck on hollowed wood, meant not mourning but calling for courage, for ancestors to walk beside them. Colonial rulers feared these gatherings, banning drums, outlawing dances. But you cannot ban memory. The rhythms simply moved into hands, into stomping feet, into whisper breaths. Even among free blacks in port cities, whisper survived. Sailors in Havana or Rio or Charleston shared fragments of the story in taverns. They said, there was a night when soldiers slaughtered slaves, but the slaves fought back until the end. They died, but their fire did not. And each listener carried it onward, reshaped, reforged. And so, what had begun as massacre turned into something empires could not control. Symbol, a symbol that told the enslaved, you are not alone. A symbol that told rulers, you will never kill memory. Symbols, after all, are more dangerous than armies. By the mid-19th century, colonial officials themselves feared these echoes. Secret police in Havana, governors in Bahia, overseers in Louisiana, all reported the same thing. Dangerous songs, whispers of past uprisings, legends of massacres. They dismissed them as superstition, yet they tightened surveillance, built more prisons, staged harsher punishments. Their fear betrayed the truth. They knew stories could topple empires. Pause again. Think of this irony. The massacre was hidden because rulers feared revolt. But by hiding it, they made it immortal, passing it mouth to mouth, generation to generation, until it fueled the very revolts they dreaded. In Haiti after independence, poets wrote verses honoring unnamed martyrs of forgotten massacres. They spoke of blood that watered freedom, of women who stood unbowed. Whether they meant this massacre or another mattered less than the fact that every revolt, every slaughter, became part of the same river, a river that drowned the myth of slavery's permanence. By the late 19th century, even abolitionists in Europe and America sometimes cited whispers of massacres as evidence. They said, if rebellion was crushed with such cruelty, why did slaves keep rising? Because slavery itself is untenable. Even enemies of rebellion could not escape its echo. The massacre became both fear and fuel, horror and hope. For some, it was proof of savagery. For others, proof of courage. For those who lived under chains, it was a reminder. Chains can break, even if blood must spill. And now, centuries later, we look back and see the massacre was not silent. Take a breath with me. In and out. Now pause. And let the weight of what we uncovered settle. We began with silence, a massacre erased from ledgers, buried beneath polite history. Soldiers stormed the corridors, bodies fell, and officials thought they could seal the truth in stone. But the silence was never complete. Memory leaked, like blood through soil, like whispers through generations. And tonight, by speaking of it, by refusing silence, we honor those who were meant to be forgotten. Ask yourself this. Why do powers fear memory? Why do they burn records, silence survivors, erase stories? Because they know memory is rebellion. To remember is to resist. To name is to defy. To speak is to break the chains of erasure. The massacre they covered up was not only about death. It was about the attempt to kill truth itself. And yet truth lived, in lullabies sung by mothers, in songs hummed in fields, in whispers carried by sailors across oceans. Truth lived in the eyes of children who saw and never forgot. Truth lived in you, because tonight you heard it. History is not only written in books. It is written in scars, in songs, in shadows. And when you look closely, you see it everywhere. A stone foundation beneath a church that once covered dungeons. A field where cane still grows, roots twisting through soil stained long ago. A story told in fragments, in half sentences, in trembling voices. Pause here. Picture walking through such a place today. The ruins of a plantation. Tourists snapping pictures. Guides rehearsing sanitized tales. But if you step away, if you touch the walls, if you close your eyes, you might hear something else. The echo of chains. The murmur of prayers. The silence heavy with screams swallowed centuries ago. The dead do not speak, but the earth remembers. That is why we must remember too. Because forgetting is complicity. Erasure, surrender. When history books omit massacres, when monuments glorify masters and silent slaves, when museums polish cruelty into artifacts without pain, they continue the violence. They do what the soldiers did that night. Turn human lives into silence. But memory, your memory, my memory, breaks that silence. And this is where I ask you to come closer. Not as an observer of history, but as a participant in it. Ask yourself, what chains still bind us today? What silences still weigh on the world? What voices are still being erased while we look away? Slavery ended in law, but not in legacy. Its shadows stretch into present, in inequality, in poverty, in racism, in prisons that echo the same designs as dungeons once did. The massacre covered up is not only past, it is mirror, and when you look into it, you see the present. The lesson is clear. Freedom is never given. It is fought for, sung for, remembered into existence. And the fight never ends. So tonight, as we close this story, I want you to carry more than facts. Carry responsibility. Carry the weight of memory as weapon, as shield, as fire. Speak of what was hidden. Share what was silenced. Refuse the comfort of forgetting. Because every time you speak this truth, you strike against centuries of erasure. Every time you tell this story, you honor those who bled for freedom. Every time you remember, you refuse silence. And now, the final question lingers, not in history, but in you. If they try to bury this massacre, how many other stories are buried still? And what will you do when you find them? Breathe with me one last time. In and out, hear the chains fall, hear the fire crackle, hear the silence break. This is not the end. It is the beginning of memory. Subscribe for more stories on the Broken Chains channel. What do you think of this hidden history? Leave your comment. Because silence was the master's weapon. Memory is ours.